Welcome to the Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef National Parks one-day itinerary. I do want to start by saying that we did this as part of a larger itinerary that we call our Great American Road Trip that was 12 days, and we visited a bunch of the national parks kind of out in that region. And when we originally planned this itinerary, these were supposed to be split up over 2 days. We were going to do Bryce Canyon all day long, end the night at Capitol Reef, and then the next day spend the day at Capitol Reef before going on to the next place. But then we kind of ended up doing everything much quicker than we thought it would take. So that was good to know that it can be squeezed in, because then you can do some of the other Utah national parks and the Scenic Byway in less time than you would expect. I do have a little bit of a video from our time there. So when we stayed, I recommend staying as close as you possibly can to Bryce Canyon to start your day off early. We stayed at the Panguitch KOA, which has closed. I'm not sure if something else has replaced it. But I would just check other KOAs or camping inside the park or finding a hotel nearby. I would say within about 30 minutes or so that you can start off the day as early as possible. Here was our little campground. This area was more so just a field that we were looking out at. So for Bryce Canyon, you want to try to get there around 8 or 9 o'clock. During the summer and like busy travel days, parking will completely fill up by 10 o'clock. We got there a little bit before 9. It wasn't during like a peak visiting day, but it was in the summer. It was like late July. First thing that you'll come across a visitor center, you can get a map, which is super important. And we also get Christmas ornaments everywhere that we travel. That's kind of like our one souvenir. So you can get that right off the bat. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can park at Sunset Point or park at Sunrise Point. But whichever one you park at is where you want to end your hike. So if this is sunrise and this is sunset, like a mile apart, you're going to walk the rim to the other one, go down into the canyon, and then end back up at your car. Regardless, you're going to have to go down like some switchbacks to get into the canyon and go up switchbacks to come back up. So there's not really one or the other that's better or worse. They're both going to be a little rough. So we did parking at Sunset Point, walked the rim over to Sunrise Point, and then started the trail at the Queen's Garden Trail. So this is the view that you will first get. Everything is like right there, right off the parking lot. Here's some other angles. This is more so pointing back a little more towards the parking lot and a more like panoramic kind of view. This is the little trail here that connects the Sunrise Point and Sunset Point parking lots. So we got to Sunrise Point at exactly 9:30 a.m. to start our hike. Our hike ended up taking us an hour and a half. Most places say to plan for at least 2 hours, and I don't feel like we went particularly quick or anything like that, but it wasn't very busy yet when we got there. We didn't even start to see people till we got to like the second half of the trail, which was nice. It was sunny and in like the high 80s all day, so we expected it to be pretty hot. One thing to keep in mind is you do want to carry some stuff down with you. This kind of applies to any hike, but since we knew it was going to be hot and sunny, we brought 5 frozen bottles of water. Doing it again, I'd probably do some drinks with electrolytes as well. We brought sunscreen. And we brought a couple of protein bars. Normally, if we know it's going to be a longer hike, we'll bring like tuna cracker kits as like more of like a full lunch. But we had also had breakfast at the campground beforehand, so we didn't feel like we needed to bring that much, and we were going to have lunch at the lodge right afterwards. So knowing we were only supposed to be out there for a couple of hours, this was kind of sufficient for us, and the bag wasn't super heavy. So once you reach Sunrise Point, you'll see this sign here for the Queen's Garden Trail, and this is what will lead you down into the canyon, and it will eventually cross over with the Navajo Loop Trail, which is like the main one that people talk about, I guess, is what you've probably heard or like seen pictures of. So they all kind of like intersect like that. So as you head down the canyon, you'll start getting like below. All these things are all called hoodoos. You'll start kind of winding down them. The rocks can be a little like slippery, like loose dirt. So I wouldn't like run down them or like let kids run off down them. There's a pretty solid chance that you can slip and fall for sure. I loved these little cutouts here that were on the pathway. You can get into the shade every so often, so you're not just in direct sunlight 24/7. What's really wild about this hike though is we had hiked the Narrows the day before, like the full length that you can do like without a permit. And so like my legs were all like torn apart on the inside here, so I had them like taped and gauzed and then had like compression shorts like underneath, but my body like wasn't sore or anything, but like that had happened, so that was made it more difficult, but still had a good time. Once you get down to the bottom of the canyon, it's a lot of like trees and shrubbery and like greenery, which I wasn't expecting. Like I just never thought about it until I saw it. It smelled like how like Sequoia or Yosemite smells, like the really just like the dry wood. But there's some places to sit down here, which is nice. So this is where we stopped and had a little bit of a break since we were kind of like about a mile in at that point. And here's a little more how you can see the change of scenery from the hoodoos down to the trees. And this is also where we started to like see other people, because other people had come down from Sunset Point, so we were all crossing paths kind of in the middle. So they had started kind of around the same time at the other end, and we were all crossing by each other. And there were definitely people like behind us too. People had, you know, done both. This is kind of what the walking trail looks like once you're down in the canyon. Pretty flat, but still like loose dirt and rocks and stuff. So eventually you'll see signs for Navajo Loop Trail, and to follow that back up out of the canyon. This is again where you can get a lot of like the photo ops and things. This one in particular had a very long line, so we were kind of doing ours a little quick, but it's interesting to see like how this little windy trail is and how high up all of the rocks go. These switchbacks here, you have to climb up all of them to get back out. These are definitely more, I would say more intense than coming in from Sunrise Point, but it's not going to necessarily feel good to go down all of this either. So it's kind of up to you. It's very shaded, so we were able to like, we would do a couple switchbacks, take a break, drink some water. But the fact that you're in the shade here, at least we were in the shade. If this was late July, probably about 10:30, 10:30 in the morning was all in the shade, which was good. And then once you get to the top of the switchbacks, this is kind of what you're looking down at, but that's not the end. You kind of have the same kind of walking trail that you take on the other side is kind of how you get out. One of the park icons is this hoodoo here called Thor's Hammer, since that's just, you know, kind of what it looks like. So that's a good photo op spot. And then, yeah, it took us an hour and a half. So we were done by 11, and we were going to do lunch at the lodge, which I do recommend, but they don't serve lunch till noon. At least they didn't when we visited. That could always change, so I would like double check and time up your timing with that. So either, you know, take some more time on the trail or something, but we didn't want to wait a whole hour because I don't know, we thought we had a full day planned, so we just had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches in our car because we had like all the groceries we needed because we were doing like a long road trip. So we just did that, and we're like, you know, we'll get more food later. It'll be fine. After that, so like the Sunrise Point, Sunset Point parking lots are right there on the edge. A little bit more like inland is where the lodge is, and then like another, I think I have it on here, like a mile and a half from the lodge is Inspiration Point. It's a good lookout point over the canyon from a different vantage point from the main trail. And then after that, like that was really the main thing that you do at Bryce Canyon. There's other trails you can definitely do, but if you want to do it all in one day, I would stick with those. And from there, you can drive Scenic Byway 12 to Capitol Reef. It's pretty much the most scenic route you can take throughout Utah. Your GPS will probably default to just taking you on a random route, but if you put in like a pinpoint where it would have to take you on that route, then you can do that. I would just be worried about like losing service, so if you want to use like a map for a little bit to get you on the route, then you should be good to go. I have a whole other post about like the lookouts and stopping points there on the byway, but for this trip we just kind of drove straight through other than stopping for gas. And it took a little less than 3 hours to do that. So that's kind of up to you how much time you want to spend doing that. One thing I recommend out here is mapping out your trip so that you make sure you're getting gas every 300 miles or so. Your car might be different. Ours at the time would have been a 2010 Ford Escape that would most of the time would get like 330 miles driving home, like at home. And then on our longer road trips, it would get like 400. But we plan to stop every 300 miles, and there's a lot of times that you're like out in the middle of nowhere, or it's just like crazy expensive gas, like $5 and $6 gas, when, you know, in town it's like $2.50 or something. So we planned it around that way. Using the Gas Buddy app is free, and you can kind of see where gas stations are going to be and what their prices are in advance. You are driving, you know, 3 hours between Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef. Once we arrived in Capitol Reef, we went to the visitor center first. We got our souvenir ornament and a map. We did not have any cell phone service at all anywhere in this park. So like, we had just put our phones in airplane mode eventually and just used them for the cameras. There was absolutely no service. I don't know if that has improved. This would have been like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. But one thing you'll want to do, first check out the Gifford house. They have homemade pies and desserts. They will probably be sold out by the time that you get here, but it's worth checking just in case. If not, if they are sold out, then if you camp here overnight like we did, then you can grab them first thing in the morning on your way out, which is what we ended up doing as well. This is what the Gifford house looks like. From there, we felt like it was too early to just like go set up camp and just like chill for the rest of the night. So we were like, okay, well, what was on our itinerary for tomorrow to do here? So we were like, okay, the Scenic Drive. So we started heading out on the Scenic Drive. It's this dirt path. It's about 8 miles. It says to plan about an hour and a half for it. We did it in 30 minutes, but we also weren't like waiting in line behind other cars, like slowing it down or anything. And we were also going like whatever the speed limit is, which I think you're usually going like 15 miles per hour through these things, or like 20, 25. So we did it in 30 minutes. It's a nice drive. Like, it's cool to see just what Capitol Reef looks like, but it's not like the most scenic drive ever in the world. From there, we did go back to the campground and start setting up. It's called the Fruita Campground. It's in like an apple orchard. So you'll see lots of deer, and they have tent camping sites and RV sites. They have bathrooms, like full real bathrooms, not just like a porta potty, but they don't have like showers. So it's good that we just stayed like the one night. But you book it in advance, and they will have a little post on your number. So you'll see your name and then the dates. So that's how you figure out what campsite is yours, because they're already pre-designated. And then once we got there, we decided to just do an early dinner, since we had a smaller lunch since we were on the road. One meal that we love to make when we're traveling, camping in particular, having the little one-pot camping stove, is tuna noodles, because it's a good like hearty home-cooked meal it doesn't need any refrigeration like in transportation, because it's just egg noodles, cream of celery, and either like a can or a bag of tuna. So none of those have to be in the fridge to stay good when you're transporting them. And you just cook the egg noodles like you normally would, and then you just add the cream of celery, add the tuna, mix it all together until it's all warm. You can add some salt and pepper, and that's it. And if you half the bag of egg noodles, like that's enough to feed 2 people for dinner. So we did that. They had a little sink to like rinse all that stuff out too, which was also good. And this is what the campsite looked like just overall. You get the fire, you get a grill, and you have the picnic table, a couple parking spots, and then, you know, the tent could have gone any which way here. And then you can see all the rows of RVs back here, and then other tent sites all around the side. After that, we were like, we still have time. Our phones weren't working. There was like no work for us to do or anything. So we decided to go see the next thing on our to-do list, and it was the Petroglyphs site. It's a 1/4-mile boardwalk trail that's just along this one big slab of rocks, and you can see all these different petroglyphs that are in here. We've gone to a lot of petroglyph sites, namely the Petroglyph National Monument in Albuquerque, and then we did a West Maui coastline driving tour. It was like a self-guided like GPS audio tour thing, and one of the stops there was also like a petroglyph site that's like almost completely unmarked. Like, I don't think most people know that it exists at all. So that was interesting. So it's fun to just kind of walk up and down the boardwalk and see, because sometimes with different lighting, you see different things, or like being different heights, you see different things. So that was really cool. From there, the next thing is to do the Hickman Bridge Trail. It's a like natural bridge, like a little arch bridge. It was kind of getting close to like sunset time, and they had a lot of mountain lion warnings. And we were like, you know, do we have enough time to get out there or not? But then at that point, we had kind of already decided, we're like, well, we'll just do everything here because this is the last thing. and then we can just get up and go like in the morning and just get to our next place early. So we were like, yeah, let's just go ahead and do it now because we have nothing else to do for this time. There's a dome. I think people can climb it, and there's another hike over there, but we weren't going to add it to our itinerary. It was either like too long or it was too like strenuous, and we tried to stay to like the easy to moderate, less than a few hour type of hikes. We did get all the way to see the Hickman Bridge, but the sun had already set, so it was like in a shadow. But the hike itself is cool because you're kind of like scrambling over rocks, and sometimes you're on a dirt path, and they had this nice river, and they had these good like red rock kind of steps going up to it. So it was overall still a good experience, and we didn't see any mountain lions, so that was also good. In this post here, there are some like frequently asked questions. You know, you can do both of these in one day like we ended up doing because things didn't take as long as we had been led to believe on like all the other sites that we looked at. The distance is about 122 miles. It takes about 2.5 hours at least. It took us almost 3, but again, we did stop for gas along the way. And one day you can see is plenty to see kind of the highlights. We did it in half a day. And then again, you want to take the Scenic drive. Some other national park itineraries in Utah. We've done Zion a lot. So I have like a full like summer itinerary if you want to spend a full day. It includes hiking the Narrows, but not to the extent of like going to the farthest point that you can go without a permit. You hike a portion of the Narrows. And then I have one for like if you hike just the Narrows, and that's kind of like your full day experience, which is really fun. I highly recommend. We've done it in pretty low waters, and we also went one day. There had been a flash flood. This would have been summer of maybe 22 or 23, not sure. There had been a flash flood, and we went the next day because we were already out in Vegas and we were planning on going over there. So we're like, well, let's just see. And like the parking lot was still washed out. The river was full and like brown and muddy. But this one in particular is when we like hiked the whole thing, and it was more like average levels. What's great about hiking the Narrows is like these are so high that you're actually in the shade a lot, and you're in the water a lot. So you're not really overheating. Like even if it's 100 degrees outside, it's maybe more feeling like 80 because you're in the shade and in water a lot. So I highly recommend it. We also have a winter itinerary for Zion. We went for our anniversary to like stay at the lodge. We actually stayed in one of the little cabins, and it's like a completely different park. Like you can't even get to the Narrows because it's completely frozen over, but you can go to this overlook trail, and very icy, very snowy, and completely empty. You can actually drive through the park during this time instead of having to take a shuttle. So it's really cool. And then Arches and Canyonlands are also like right next to each other. So in Moab, you got like one on one side and one on the other. So those can also be combined into like a 1 day or like a 2 day grouping together. It's also very popular to go to all 5 of these. It's called the Mighty 5 Utah National Parks, to do them all in one trip. For this trip in particular, we didn't do Arches and Canyonlands as part of our larger trip because we were already planning to do it for like a Southwest US type of thing. So yeah, so we did this as part of a larger trip. Day 1 was driving Anaheim to Zion. Day 2 was hiking the Narrows. Day 3 was Bryce Canyon and Capitol Reef. And then from there, we went up to Dinosaur National Monument and continued around doing like Mount Rushmore and Yellowstone, Grand Teton, and circling all the way back down to Vegas.